It happened so fast, and yet it felt like the world slowed down just to make it hurt more. The milk hit Emily Carter square in the face, a cold white slap that stung her eyes and soaked her honey-blonde hair. It ran in rivulets down her neck and splattered all over her favorite pink backpack. Her math book hit the sidewalk with a wet slap. And then came the laughter, loud, cruel, and echoing through the empty schoolyard. "Crybaby. Emily needs a bottle," yelled Tommy Reynolds, his voice slicing the afternoon like a blade. His two shadows, Vanessa Cook and Jaden Morris, howled in delight, circling her like vultures. Emily dropped to her knees, tears mixing with the milk as she scrambled to gather her soaked papers. That's when she heard it. A low growl. Not the kind a regular dog makes, but something deeper, ancient, righteous. She looked up. Emerging from between two parked cars was the biggest German shepherd she had ever seen. His fur was a mottled mix of black and tan, streaked with grime and time. One ear was nicked, a deep scar slashed across the right side of his face. But it was his eyes that froze everyone, amber, fierce, intelligent. He didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He just stared down Tommy with the kind of quiet power that makes even bullies question their choices. Tommy backed up. "What the hell?" The growl deepened. "Run!" Vanessa shrieked. And just like that, the predator became the prey. The three kids scattered, slipping in their own cruelty. For a few seconds, it was just Emily and the dog, and in that silence, something passed between them, not fear, not pity, something like understanding. Brookdale was the kind of town where people left their front doors unlocked and said things like, "Not much ever happens around here." But for 10-year-old Emily Carter, everything had already happened. First, there was the knock on the door. Her mom's soft scream, then the folded flag. Her dad, a Marine who never came back from Afghanistan. The town had held a candlelight vigil. The mayor gave a speech, and then everyone moved on, except Emily. She and her mom downsized to a fixer-upper on Sycamore Lane, paint peeling, pipes creaking. Her mom, Sarah Carter, worked double shifts at the urgent care clinic just to make rent. That left Emily walking to school on her own, eating lunch alone and hoping Tommy Reynolds wouldn't be waiting with another game. Tommy was 13, mean as a wasp, and the son of Brookdale's mayor, a man who treated the town like his private golf course. And since no one wanted to upset Mayor Caldwell, Tommy could get away with just about anything. Emily's teachers called it normal childhood teasing. Her mom called it another reason to consider homeschooling. But Emily had stopped, complaining. She'd learned that silence hurt less than hope, until today, until him, the dog. She stood slowly, milk dripping from her bangs, and looked at her rescuer. He stood about 20 feet away now, his body still, eyes watching her but not aggressively, cautiously, like he was trying to figure her out too. "Thank you," Emily whispered, her voice hoarse. The dog tilted his head. She stepped forward, then stopped. She remembered what her dad had said about strange dogs. Always let them come to you. So she crouched, ignoring the soggy notebook pages at her feet, and extended a milk-soaked hand. The dog approached slowly, like a soldier returning, to base. When he was close enough, he sniffed her hand gently and gave it one single soft lick. Emily smiled through her tears. "You're not scary at all, are you?" She looked in her backpack, pulling out a squashed sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "It's peanut butter and banana," she said. "My dad's favorite." The dog accepted the sandwich like a gentleman, carefully, politely, eyes never leaving hers. That's how it started. Every morning, when Emily stepped off her porch at 7:30 a.m., the dog was there, waiting. No leash, no collar, no barking. Just there. He'd fall into step beside her like they'd been walking to school together for years. He never tried to enter the school. He'd stop exactly at the gate, sit and watch until she disappeared inside. When school let out, he'd be waiting again, sitting across the street in the shade like a guardian no one had asked for, but everyone noticed. Kids started whispering. Teachers peeked out windows. Parents called the office. Is that dog dangerous? But the only thing dangerous about him was how protective he was of Emily. If this moment already has your heart, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe to Heroes for Animals to follow the rest of Bolt and Emily's story, where real courage comes with 4 legs and a scar. Now back to Brookdale. Emily still didn't know his name, but she talked to him like an old friend. I live on Sycamore, number 14. It's the blue one with the broken mailbox, she'd explain as they walked. Mom says the roof needs work, but we can't afford it right now. He listened. Really, listened. He'd move his ears when she talked, tilt his head when she asked questions, stay perfectly silent when she cried. He wouldn't cross her yard line, though, no matter how many times she invited him in. You're a gentleman, she said one evening, sitting on her front steps. A fuzzy 4-legged gentleman. She left out a bowl of water and half a meatloaf sandwich. The next morning, gone. The water bowl, licked clean. The sandwich, missing. The spot where he usually sat, still warm. Next door, 78-year-old Mrs. Adelaide Brooks was watching everything. Widowed, retired school teacher, and local porch gossip. She saw more from that rocking chair than most people did with binoculars. She'd seen Emily change. Shoulders straighter, eyes brighter. She'd seen the dog, too. That's no stray, she muttered one afternoon. That's a soldier. Mrs. Brooks had taught 3rd grade for 4 decades. She recognized discipline when she saw it. That dog didn't just sit. He waited. He didn't just walk, he escorted. She started leaving leftovers in the side garage. Roast chicken, beef stew, old ham bones. The dog never made a mess. Never barked, never stayed past dawn. But every night her garage door creaked open just slightly wider. Emily's mom noticed the change too. Her daughter didn't flinch anymore when people walked too close. She didn't cry silently at night, clutching her dad's photo. One night, as Sarah stood doing dishes, she saw the dog, sitting outside the front gate, head high, watching Emily on the porch. She stepped outside. You're the one, huh? The one who turned things around. The dog glanced at her, then back to Emily. Of course, she murmured. You don't work for people, you choose them. Emily finally gave him a name. Bolt, she said one morning, after reading a library book on Greek mythology. He was the flash of light. Fast, powerful, and always there when you needed him. Bolt didn't react. Not at first. But later, when she said, "Good boy, Bolt," his tail thumped once. That was enough. Brookdale hadn't seen anything yet. Because the real story of Bolt, the one that would shake the town to its core, hadn't even begun. And next week, when the skies open and the streets flood, Brookdale will learn just how far a dog can go to protect the girl who needed him most. But for now, he waits. At the edge of a schoolyard, for a girl with a heavy backpack, a soft voice, and a heart full of scars. By the 3rd week of Bolt's daily patrol, people in Brookdale had started to talk. Some whispered admiration. Others concern. That dog walks like he owns the street, Mr. Dempsey from the gas station said. I swear he saluted me with his tail, joked Mrs. Halverson, the librarian. But in the Reynolds household, inside the largest house on the nicest block, concern turned to something sharper, something meaner. Tommy Reynolds hadn't forgotten that day in the schoolyard, the milk, the growl, the way he and his friends had run, soaked in fear and shame. Most of all, he hadn't forgotten Emily kneeling in the mess he created, looking up at that dog like he was sent from heaven. And the worst part? Bolt never touched them, he didn't need to. Just one look from that dog was enough to rattle something deep in Tommy's chest, something he wasn't ready to face. At home, he'd tried to brush it off. Some mutt showed up. Dumb thing growled, at us. Mayor Caldwell had narrowed his eyes. You didn't provoke it? Tommy shrugged. It was barking at nothing. But it wasn't barking. That was the thing. It didn't bark at all. In the quiet garage next door to Emily's house, Mrs. Brooks was working by flashlight. The old storm lantern still worked, though it smelled faintly of kerosene. She used it to check the corner where Bolt had started sleeping. She didn't call him that, of course. To her, he was still Soldier. That night, she laid out fresh blankets, a tin of beef stew, and a bowl of filtered water. "Storm's coming," she muttered, eyeing the barometric needle on the antique weather clock by the window. "Gonna be a nasty one." Bolt was already there, dry now, resting on his side but alert. He opened one eye as she approached, gave a soft huff of acknowledgement, and tucked his nose back beneath his paw. Mrs. Brooks reached down and gently stroked his scarred head. "You're not just watching Emily," she whispered. "You're guarding this whole neighborhood, aren't you, big guy?" Bolt didn't move, but he didn't need to. At school, things were shifting too. Emily wasn't invisible anymore. People stopped whispering when she walked past. Some even smiled. Most didn't dare to say anything rude, at least not where Bolt might hear. It wasn't popularity. It was something quieter, a kind of respect. Even her teacher, Ms. Howell, seemed to notice. "Nice job on your fractions quiz," she said one afternoon, placing the graded paper on Emily's desk. "I can tell you're working hard." Emily smiled shyly. "Thank you." She didn't say it out loud, but the truth was, she'd started studying again. She wanted to do well. She wanted Bolt to be proud of her, even if he couldn't say so. Meanwhile, Sarah Carter was trying to figure out how to keep their lives from unraveling. The rent was going up next month. The car needed new tires, and her most recent paycheck had been short by 2 shifts. Budget cuts at the urgent care clinic. She stood at the kitchen table one evening, looking at a yellow envelope, marked final notice, and when she heard a knock at the door, it was Mrs. Brooks. "I made too much banana bread," the older woman lied. "Thought you and Emily could use a little sweet." Sarah smiled gratefully, stepping aside. "Come in." They sat on the worn couch, the loaf between them on a chipped plate. "Emily's doing better," Sarah said. "She's laughing again." "That dog's a miracle," Mrs. Brooks replied. Sarah hesitated. Do you think he's trained? I mean, the way he walks beside her, the way he waits, it's like he's on duty," Mrs. Brooks finished. "Yes, I'd bet my pension that dog was military or police. You can see it in how he moves." Sarah ran a hand through her hair. "Emily calls him Bolt. He won't come inside, but he sleeps in your garage. Every night." "Every night." They sat in silence for a while before Sarah spoke again. "I don't know how we'll afford to keep him if animal control shows up. If they demand licensing or shots or anything." Mrs. Brooks patted her hand. "Let me worry about that." Across town, someone else was worrying about Bolt. Officer Ryan Dean sat at his desk at the Brookdale Police Department, flipping through old K9 records. He'd seen the dog outside the school one afternoon. Alert posture, precise stillness, the kind of behavioral control that didn't come from a backyard. And then he'd noticed the scar. It jogged a memory. He pulled out a file. K9 unit, statewide database. There it was. K9, Officer Bolt ID, K97, Handler, Officer Anthony Morales. Status, deceased in line of duty, October 21st, K9 missing, presumed dead. Scar, right side facial laceration, white blaze on chest. Dean whistled low. "No way," he murmured. "You made it out." Emily found the dog again waiting for her after school the next day. She ran across the street, dropped her backpack, and crouched next to him. "Guess what?" she whispered. "I made a friend." She gestured toward the girl crossing the playground behind her. Dark curls, glasses, and a book clutched to her chest. "That's Grace. She said she likes my drawings. We're going to sit together at lunch tomorrow." Bolt watched the girl, then looked back at Emily. "You did this," Emily said. "Because of you, I'm not afraid anymore." He leaned forward and gently rested his head on her knee. She stroked behind his ears. "I wish you could stay forever." But not everyone wanted Bolt to stay. Mayor Caldwell had filed a formal complaint with animal control. The form was filled with phrases like aggressive behavior, unlicensed stray, and potential threat. "He follows my son to school," the mayor lied in his report. "He's intimidating the children." Officer Dean saw the complaint. He also saw through it. He placed the folder on Chief Lawson's desk. "Sir," Dean said, "I think I found something you need to see." The chief raised an eyebrow. "A dog file? Not just any dog. A missing K9, presumed dead. But he's alive, and protecting a little girl right here in Brookdale." That night, a summer thunderstorm rolled across the hills. Lightning flashed. Thunder cracked like artillery. And in the garage on Sycamore Lane, Bolt couldn't sleep. He paced, whined, clawed gently at the door, like trying to escape memories only he could see. Mrs. Brooks came down in her robe, carrying an old wool blanket and a mug of chamomile tea. She found him panting, his body trembling with every boom of thunder. "My Harold was the same," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "Came, back from Korea with more ghosts than medals." She lay the blanket over his back and sat beside him, stroking his side. "You're safe now, soldier. You did your duty." The next morning, Emily found Bolt curled on the porch, tail wagging weakly. She knelt beside him, concern etched into her face. "Rough night?" He thumped his tail once. She pulled something from her backpack, a peanut butter dog biscuit shaped like a bone. "I saved you this," she said. He took it carefully, chewing with quiet dignity. She didn't notice Officer Dean parked across the street in an unmarked cruiser, but Bolt did. And for the first time since coming to Brookdale, the dog's body tensed, not in fear, in recognition. He remembered the scent, the uniform, the voice, and something in Bolt's heart stirred. The past was not gone. It was circling back. The rain started like a whisper. Just a soft patter on the windows, the kind that made you want to curl up with a blanket and a bowl of soup. But by morning, Brookdale had turned into something else entirely. Flood alerts lit up phones across the county. Storm sirens wailed through town. The local radio station dropped its music playlist to issue non-stop emergency announcements. By 10 a.m., the creek behind Sycamore Lane was a roaring brown monster, swelling past its usual banks, threatening to devour everything in its path. "Flash flood warning now in effect for Brookdale and surrounding areas," the radio blared. "Residents in low-lying neighborhoods are urged to evacuate to Brookdale High School, now serving as a temporary emergency shelter." Sarah Carter stood in the kitchen, the radio beside her, packing a gallon of water and protein bars into a grocery bag. Her uniform was already soaked from walking to the car and back. "Emily," she called out, "hurry up and get your overnight bag. You're staying with Mrs. Brooks while I'm at work." "But what about Bolt?" "He'll be fine in the garage," Sarah said, zipping her rain jacket. "And you'll be just next door if anything happens." Emily's voice wavered. "It's flooding, Mom. What if—" "I'll be fine," Sarah interrupted gently, brushing a wet strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "You know how much they need nurses when weather gets bad." Bolt stood silently by the front door, alert but calm. His coat had grown darker with the humidity, and the scar across his face seemed to deepen with the low light. "I want you to listen to Mrs. Brooks, okay?" Sarah said, kneeling to hug Emily. "And stay inside. No exceptions." Emily nodded. As Sarah stepped out into the storm, she glanced back once to see Bolt standing protectively behind her daughter, like a statue carved from loyalty. Mrs. Brooks was already boiling water when Emily and Bolt arrived. Her old farmhouse smelled like cinnamon and mothballs, but it was cozy and safe. "We'll be fine here," she said confidently, her voice cutting through the thunder. "This house hasn't flooded since '86, and I've got candles, a landline, and canned peaches for days." Emily and Bolt sat on the couch, flipping through a book about famous police dogs. She traced a picture with her finger. "I think Bolt used to be one of these," she whispered. "He knows stuff, and stuff regular dogs don't." Mrs. Brooks nodded slowly. "I wouldn't be surprised." Then the lights flickered, once, twice. Then darkness. "Well, shoot," Mrs. Brooks muttered, grabbing the flashlight. "There goes the power." Across town at Brookdale Elementary, the summer enrichment program was in session. Barely. Only 20 kids had shown up that day, including Tommy Reynolds, who was required to attend after flunking math. The classrooms on the lower level had already begun to take on water, "We're moving everyone upstairs," barked Principal Monroe, trying to mask the panic in his voice. The phones were down, buses weren't running. Some of the staff had already left, hoping to beat the storm. No one had expected things to get this bad, this fast. Tommy stood by a second-floor window, staring out into the rain with a nervous frown. "My dad better be coming for me," he muttered. Across the room, Grace sat quietly, hugging her knees. She glanced at Tommy but said nothing. "Buddy up," a teacher called. "No one walks alone, even to the restroom. We stay together." Tommy shuffled over to Grace reluctantly. "Guess we're buddies now," he mumbled. "Guess so," she replied, not looking up. Back on Sycamore Lane, the water had crept up to the first step of Mrs. Brooks's porch. "We should go," Emily said nervously. But the landline was dead. Cell towers were out, and outside, the street had turned into a brown river, thick with debris and moving faster than anyone wanted to admit. Mrs. Brooks hesitated, her confident tone from earlier now replaced by quiet calculation. "We'll wait just a bit longer," she finally said. "Maybe the worst has passed." Bolt, however, didn't wait. He began pacing, ears twitching with every crack of thunder. Then he barked. Once, loud and sharp. It wasn't random. It was intentional, urgent. He ran to the door and scratched. Emily stood frozen. "I think he's trying to tell us something," she said. "He knows." Mrs. Brooks moved toward the window. Sweet Lord. A massive oak tree had cracked in the neighbor's yard. Within seconds, it crashed against the back of Mrs. Brooks's house with a sound like a bomb, ripping through the roof. "All right," she said briskly. "We're leaving. Now." They stepped into knee-high water. Emily wore her raincoat, clutching her backpack. Mrs. Brooks carried a tote with medication, IDs, and water bottles. And Bolt? Bolt waded into the flood like a warhorse, chest deep, steady, never flinching. "I can't make it through this current alone," Mrs. Brooks said shakily. Bolt moved beside her and pressed into her hip, creating a brace. "You're kidding," she whispered. "He's helping you walk," Emily said. "Just like the search dogs I read about." Mrs. Brooks placed a trembling hand on Bolt's back and nodded. They headed toward Brookdale High School, now the designated emergency shelter. But about halfway down the block, Emily stopped dead in her tracks. "Grace," she whispered. "She's at school?" Mrs. Brooks turned. "They've probably already evacuated the kids." "No," Emily said, her voice rising. "Brookdale Elementary floods first. You know that. What if they're trapped?" Bolt lifted his head, ears perked. Then he gave a single sharp bark. He was ready. "I'm going," Emily said. "Even if I have to go alone." "Like hell you are," Mrs. Brooks snapped. "You're not going anywhere without me and Bolt." The detour to the elementary school was brutal. Water pushed against their legs, pulling at them like claws. Several times Mrs. Brooks stumbled, but Bolt steadied her, each time adjusting his pace to match her steps. When they reached the school, the sight stole their breath. The bottom floor was completely underwater. Faces pressed against the second-floor windows, children waving frantically. Some teachers held flashlights, flicking them in desperate SOS patterns. "They're trapped," Emily whispered. Just then, a police cruiser appeared from the north side, braving the water. Officer Dean jumped out, tethered to his vehicle by a safety line. "What are you doing here?" he shouted over the wind. "There are kids inside," Mrs. Brooks yelled back. Dean looked up and saw them. "We need to get them out now. The foundation's not going to hold." As he radioed for backup, Bolt sprang into action. Without hesitation, the German Shepherd swam into the rising water, heading for a side entrance where the door handle was still visible. "Bolt!" Emily screamed. Dean held her back. "Wait, he knows what he's doing." Inside the school, chaos reigned. The kids had begun to cry. Teachers shouted over each other. Water had started seeping into the second stairwell. Then they heard it. Click. Tap. Click, the unmistakable sound of claws on tile. "Is that a dog?" one teacher asked. Tommy stood up, peering down the dark hallway. A familiar face appeared. Bolt. soaked, silent, staring at them. "He's here," Tommy gasped. "He found us." Bolt turned and began walking toward the far stairwell, pausing to make sure they followed. "Move," a teacher ordered. Outside, Officer Dean had inflated 2 emergency rafts. Emily and Mrs. Brooks helped load kids as Bolt led them to the side exit, his fur slick with rain, eyes sharp as ever. One by one, the children climbed aboard. Tommy was one of the last. He held Grace's hand as they stepped in. "You okay?" he asked, almost in a whisper. Grace nodded. "You?" "I think I'm finally getting it," Tommy said. Then, just as the final raft was pushing off, a piece of the school's outer wall crumbled into the water with a deafening crash. The wave knocked Emily clean off her feet. She disappeared. "Emily!" Mrs. Brooks screamed. Bolt didn't hesitate. He dove in. Seconds passed, then a minute, then a head. 2. Bolt surfaced, Emily's coat clenched carefully in his jaws, swimming hard against the current. Officer Dean met them halfway, pulling them to safety. Bolt collapsed in the grass beside the cruiser. His body was trembling, his breath shallow. Emily crawled beside him, soaking wet, sobbing. "Please," she whispered. "Please be okay." The emergency room was chaos. Nurses shouted orders over the hum of backup generators. Flashlights cut across water-streaked floors. Rain-soaked patients were wheeled in on stretchers, some coughing, some crying, others too dazed to speak. And through the middle of it all came Officer Ryan Dean, his uniform drenched, his face streaked with mud, carrying a limp German shepherd in his arms. "Somebody help!" he shouted, his voice raw with urgency. "We've got a downed service dog." Behind him, Mrs. Brooks guided a shivering Emily through the ER doors, both soaked to the bone. Emily's eyes were locked on Bolt, who hadn't moved since they pulled him from the floodwaters. His chest rose and fell in shallow jerks, his legs twitching slightly with every intake of breath. "Where's my mom?" Emily asked, her voice cracking. "Please, someone get my mom." She didn't have to wait long. Sarah Carter burst through, the triage curtain with her stethoscope still around her neck, and a clipboard half filled with patient notes clutched in her hand. When she saw her daughter, muddy, crying, barefoot, everything else dropped away. "Emily," she gasped, pulling her close. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Emily shook her head, tears pouring down her cheeks. "It's Bolt, Mom. He saved everyone. He saved me, but now he won't wake up." Sarah's heart sank as her eyes landed on the dog. His breathing was ragged, his eyes barely open, and the water he'd swallowed in the flood. God knows what toxins were in it. "We're gonna help him," Sarah said quickly. "We're not giving up." "Dr. Sims," she shouted. "We've got a working canine with exposure, fatigue, and possible internal injuries." From the far end of the ER, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair jogged over. Dr. Dana Sims, a local vet who had volunteered when the power went out, knelt beside Bolt and examined him in practiced clinical silence. "Let's get him to exam room 3, she said. "Move fast. We don't have long." Inside the exam room, it was all hands on deck. An oxygen mask was slipped over Bolt's muzzle. An IV line was started in his foreleg. A nurse gently dried his fur with a towel while Dr. Sims pressed against his abdomen, checking for swelling or signs of hemorrhage. "He's severely dehydrated," she said. "And I'm guessing he's been living rough for months. He's got old injuries that were never treated, including at least one cracked rib." This rescue effort just about finished what trauma had already started. Emily sat outside the door, clutching her knees to her chest. Her wet clothes clung to her, and her teeth wouldn't stop chattering, but she refused to leave. "I'm not going home," she whispered to Sarah. "Not without him." "You don't have to," Sarah said softly, wrapping a warm blanket around her daughter's shoulders. "We're staying right here." It wasn't long before the waiting room doors slammed open again, this time revealing a frantic Mayor Caldwell and his son Tommy. Tommy's right arm was in a makeshift splint, his face pale and streaked with dried tears. "We need help," the mayor barked. "My son's hurt." Sarah was already on her feet, gesturing to a nurse for assistance. "Get them into room 5. Let's get that arm x-rayed." But Tommy didn't move. His eyes were locked on Bolt. "Is he gonna be okay?" Tommy asked quietly. Emily looked up. "You're here?" Tommy nodded, then looked down. "He saved me too." That silence between them, the old kind, filled with blame and hurt, was different now. It had changed. "I'm sorry," he said, loud enough for only her to hear. "For everything." Emily didn't say anything back, but she didn't look away. An hour later, Dr. Sims stepped out of the exam room. Her face was tired, her arms were crossed, but her voice was steady. "He's alive," she said. Emily gasped. "Really?" "He's stable for now," the vet continued. "But he needs specialized care, imaging, surgery, constant monitoring. I've done what I can, but he'll have to be transferred to the veterinary hospital in Riverview." "That's 40 miles away," Sarah said. "The roads are closed." "They'll be closed for days," Dr. Sims nodded. "The only option is airlift, but it'll cost thousands." Sarah stared at the floor. "We don't have that kind of money." Emily stood clenching her fists. "Then we'll do something else. We'll raise it. I don't care how." Before anyone could respond, another voice cut through the ER. "I'll cover it." Everyone turned. Mayor Caldwell stood at the nurses' station, his tie loosened, his face drawn. "Get that dog the help he needs. He saved my son's life." "You're serious?" Sarah asked, stunned. "I've made a lot of mistakes," he said. "This dog made sure my son came home tonight. That's not something you ignore." A few minutes later, the call went out. A private helicopter was being prepped. Bolt would be flown to Riverview at sunrise. Meanwhile, Officer Dean had returned to the precinct. He didn't head straight home. He walked into the file room, opened a locked drawer, and pulled out a folder marked K97, Bolt. Inside were photos, notes, commendations, a short summary of the warehouse incident that had ended his career, and nearly his life. Dean stared at the photo of a younger, healthier Bolt, standing proudly beside his handler, Officer Anthony Morales. Both looked straight at the camera, one man, one dog, linked by something no outsider could define. Dean exhaled slowly. Then he picked up the phone. "Chief Lawson," he said when the line picked up. "I know who the dog is." The next morning, as the sun rose over a battered Brookdale, the helicopter arrived. It landed behind the hospital, kicking up a cyclone of dust and debris. Paramedics moved quickly, lifting Bolt's stretcher into the cabin. Emily walked beside them, one hand resting gently on Bolt's shoulder. "I'll see you soon," she whispered. "You better come back." He didn't move. But he was breathing. That was enough. As the helicopter lifted into the sky, carrying Bolt toward the care he needed, Sarah stood with her daughter, watching until it became a speck in the clouds. "You think he'll come back?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah put an arm around her. "I think if anyone can, it's Bolt." Over the next 3 days, Brookdale started to clean up. Neighbors helped neighbors. Debris was cleared. Power was restored in phases. The school, though damaged, had no casualties, thanks entirely to the dog who showed up when no one else would. And while some folks still referred to him as that stray, most now called him what he was, a hero. At Riverview Veterinary Hospital, Bolt was being treated by a team of the best animal trauma surgeons in the state. He was still too weak to move much, but he responded to Emily's voice during phone calls and video check-ins. His vitals were improving. The infection from the floodwater was under control. Still, the damage ran deep. His hip shows early signs of dysplasia, one surgeon said. "Old bullet fragments near the ribs. This dog's been through hell." Emily didn't flinch. "He's getting through it. He always does." Back in Brookdale, Officer Dean met with Chief Lawson in his office. "So, this dog," the chief said, flipping through the updated file. "He's K97, officially listed as missing in action after Morales died." Dean nodded. "But he didn't die. He ran, survived, and now he's saved 23 people, including the mayor's kid." The chief leaned back. You think we should reclaim him? Dean shook his head. He's not a tool. Not anymore. He's bonded to that girl. If you take him away now, you'll break them both. Lawson scratched his beard. What do you suggest? A formal retirement, Dean said. We transfer ownership to the Carter family. Let him live out his days where he's already chosen. The chief raised an eyebrow. And the medical costs? Mayor Caldwell already started a fund, Dean replied. Public donations are rolling in. People are behind this. Lawson chuckled. Well, I'll be damned. The town's heart grew 3 sizes this week. Dean smiled. All it took was a dog with a scar and a sense of duty. That night, in a small bedroom on Sycamore Lane, Emily Carter opened her journal. She flipped past pages of sadness, fear, and sketches of Bolt lying in the grass. She picked up her pen. Today, Bolt flew in a helicopter, she wrote. He's fighting hard, but he's not alone. We're going to bring him home. 3 days after the flood, Brookdale was still drying out. The streets were muddy. Sandbags lined storefronts. Debris, tree limbs, broken mailboxes, kids' toys lay in neat piles on curbs. The high school gym was still running as an emergency. Shelter and neighbors were sharing coffee over folding tables and tarps. But amid the mess and mending, there was something else. A quiet shift. Folks smiled more. They asked how each other was doing. Kids waved to firefighters. People dropped off meals for families who'd lost everything. And everywhere you went, someone was talking about the dog. Bolt. At the hospital, Emily called the veterinary center twice a day. She had memorized the extension. Hi, this is Emily Carter, just calling to check on Bolt. Most times the nurse on the other end would smile through the phone. He's doing better. He took a few steps today, ate all his chicken and rice. He wagged his tail when we mentioned your name. Each little update was a light in the dark. Sarah Carter used her breaks at the urgent care clinic to fill out paperwork, pet adoption forms, medical transfer requests. She was already making room in their tight monthly budget for Bolt's care, no matter what it took. Mrs. Brooks, meanwhile, turned into a one-woman PR team. At church, at the library, at the post office. She told everyone who'd listen about the soldier dog who had saved Brookdale's children. That dog doesn't need a kennel, she'd say. He needs a medal. And slowly the idea spread. It started with a post on Brookdale's community Facebook page. Let's do something for Bolt, it read. A real ceremony, not just a thanks, something official. That dog deserves to be honored the way we honor our heroes. By noon, the post had 200 likes. By dinner, it had 500. The mayor's office, still under a bit of heat for past complaints, caught wind and called an emergency city council meeting. The idea passed unanimously. An outdoor event was scheduled for the following Saturday on the town green. A local hardware store offered to donate chairs. The bakery offered cookies, bone-shaped ones, of course, and the school band volunteered to play the national anthem. Meanwhile, Bolt was recovering. Slowly. He slept a lot. His breathing was still heavy, his steps unsteady. But when Dr. Sims entered the recovery room each morning, his ears perked. He's got grit, she said to Emily over the phone. But more than that, he's got something to fight for. That matters. Emily started writing letters, one every day. She decorated them with stickers and drawings, hearts, police badges, paws. Each one ended the same way. We're waiting for you. Please come home. On the Friday before the ceremony, Officer Dean returned to the hospital to talk to Emily and Sarah. He brought papers, official ones. I wanted to tell you in person, he said. It's done. Bolt's being formally retired from the department. No more stray. No more limbo. He's yours now. Sarah's hands trembled as she accepted the documents. You're serious? Dean smiled. Completely. Chief Lawson signed off. The mayor signed off. Even the department accountant cried a little. Emily jumped up and hugged him around the waist. Thank you. You two gave him something to live for, Dean said. It's only right that he gets to stay with you. That Saturday, the weather was perfect. Blue skies, a light breeze, The kind of morning where birds chirped from rooftops and coffee tasted better. Folding chairs lined the green, each with a small American flag tucked into the corner. A podium stood at the front, flanked by flower arrangements and a large banner. Welcome. Home Officer Bolt, hero of Brookdale. Hundreds showed up, kids held handmade signs. Seniors brought lawn chairs. A few veterans wore medals pinned to their jackets. The mayor was there, along with the entire town council and the local news crew. When the veterinary transport van arrived, everyone fell silent. The door opened slowly, and out stepped Bolt. He walked with a limp, but his head was high. His coat had regained some of its shine. The scar on his face stood out like a badge of honor. Emily held the leash, though she didn't need to. He would have followed her anywhere. The crowd erupted. Applause, whistles, a few tears. Even the mayor looked misty-eyed as he stepped to the mic. In my time as mayor, he began, I've given speeches to welcome new businesses, honor veterans, and celebrate our town's founding. But today is different. He looked down at Bolt. Today we honor a hero who didn't sign up for this job, didn't ask for recognition, and didn't back down when it mattered most. The audience listened in silence. This dog, this officer, put his life on the line to protect our children, to protect my child, and he did it not because he had to, but because it was the right thing to do. He cleared his throat and reached into his pocket. With that in mind, and on behalf of the Brookdale Police Department, I am proud to present the Medal of Valor to K-9 Officer Bolt. He knelt and pinned a small silver badge to Bolt's new, blue collar. Bolt didn't move, but his tail wagged, just once, and that was enough. Later, as the crowd mingled and kids took pictures with Bolt, Tommy Reynolds approached Emily. He had something in his hand, a piece of leather, carefully tooled, and painted, a name tag. It read, Bolt, hero of Brookdale. I made this, Tommy mumbled, holding it out. For him, I learned leather work from my grandpa. Emily blinked. It's really nice. Tommy shrugged. I know I've been a jerk, but I mean it. He saved my life, I'll never forget it. Bolt stepped forward and sniffed the tag. Then, in a moment that stunned everyone around them, he nudged Tommy's hand gently with his nose. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close, as the sun dipped behind the trees. The green began to clear. Emily, Sarah, and Mrs. Brooks walked Bolt home, the town waving them off like a parade. When they reached the little blue house on Sycamore Lane, Bolt stopped at the front steps. He looked up. Then, for the first time, he stepped through the door. No hesitation, no boundary, just home. He padded into the living room, circled the couch once, and lay down with a heavy, contented sigh. Emily curled up beside him. Welcome back, she whispered. You're where you belong. And for the first night in a long, long time, everything was quiet. Everything was safe. 1 month later, the leaves on Sycamore Lane had started to turn. The morning air had that crisp edge that hinted at fall. Pumpkins appeared on porches. The grocery store had a giant inflatable ghost out front. And in the small blue house on the corner, a dog who once had no name now had 2 bowls by the door, a bed in the living room, and his name stitched into a doormat. Welcome home, Bolt. Every day he got a little stronger. He still limped sometimes, especially when the weather changed, but his coat had thickened, his tail wagged more often, and when Emily pulled out his leash, he stood like a soldier, taller, steadier. There, morning walks had become part of the neighborhood rhythm. Mrs. Ellison waved from her front porch. Mr. Tran at the corner store kept dog treats behind the counter labeled for Officer Bolt only. The mailman even bought him a little bandana that read, Retired, not tired. And in the evenings after homework and dinner, Emily would lie beside Bolt on the rug and read stories aloud. My teacher says I'm reading at a 6th grade level, now, she told him one night. Mom says it's because you listen so well. Bolt thumped his tail. He approved. Across town, change was happening too. The school principal, Mr. Monroe, had quietly stepped down, retiring 2 years early. The superintendent announced a new zero-tolerance policy for bullying. Every classroom got a resource box labeled Safe Place, and the local PTA held a town hall on student mental health, an event that hadn't happened in Brookdale in over a decade. At that town hall, Sarah Carter was asked to speak. She stood at the microphone, nervous but calm, and told her story, not just of the flood or the rescue, but of the year before it. The quiet, heavy months when her daughter came home in tears. The notes from teachers that went unanswered. The bruises no one explained. And then, the dog, the unexpected angel with a scar and silent eyes. "I don't think we saved him," Sarah said that night. "I think he saved us." The room stood in applause. Tommy Reynolds changed too. Not overnight, not all at once, but noticeably. He started helping the janitor clean up after lunch, apologized to teachers, spoke quieter in class. One day Emily found a folded piece of paper in her locker. It wasn't mean. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple note. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to be better. Tommy." She stared at it for a long time, then tucked it into her backpack between her homework and a library book titled How to Train Your Dog, Advanced Obedience for Working Breeds. Officer Dean still stopped by once a week. He brought Bolt a new toy each visit: squeaky balls, rope chews, a stuffed eagle that Bolt immediately decapitated. But mostly he just sat on the porch and talked with Emily. "Think he misses being on duty?" she asked one afternoon. Dean glanced at the dog, sprawled on his back in the sun, snoring with all 4 legs in the air. "I think he's earned this, Nap," he smiled. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a shiny brass tag. He handed it to Emily. "What is it?" she asked, reading the engraving. "K9 Officer. Bolt Badge, Mears K97. Retired with honor. Service before self." "It's his real badge," Dean said. "We found it in storage. Thought he should have it." Emily held it like it was made of gold. "Can I put it on his collar? Only if you don't mind him being the most decorated dog in town." Mrs. Brooks remained the community's fiercest defender of Bolt. She'd even started a local column in the Brookdale Gazette titled Pause for Thought, where she told stories about retired service animals and the lessons they left behind. One of her articles got picked up by a national blog, and 2 weeks later a package arrived for Emily. Inside was a handwritten letter and a hardcover book titled K9 Heroes: True Stories of Courage. It was from a woman named Natalie Foster, widow of Officer Anthony Morales, Bolt's original handler. The letter read, "Dear Emily, I heard about what Bolt did for your town, and for you. My husband always said Bolt had a bigger heart than any human. I believe that more than ever now. Thank you for giving him the home and love he always deserved. With gratitude, Natalie Morales Foster." Emily pressed the letter to her chest, and for the first time Bolt barked. Just once. But it was enough to make her laugh. Later that fall, something magical happened. The high school announced its first ever Heroes Day Parade. There were floats, marching bands, banners, and leading the whole procession, Bolt, riding in the back of a vintage fire truck flanked by veterans and firefighters with Emily beside him in a blue dress and a proud grin. As the crowd cheered, Bolt stood tall, tail wagging, badge gleaming in the sun. "Is that the dog who saved the school?" "Yep, that's Bolt. I heard he opened a door during the flood." "He did. Found a whole exit path." "What a good boy." "No, what a great boy." That night, after the parade, Sarah tucked Emily into bed. "Can Bolt sleep here tonight?" Emily asked. Sarah smiled. "Does he ever sleep anywhere else?" Bolt hopped up onto the bed, curling at Emily's feet like he always did. "Hey, Mom." "Yeah, sweetheart? Do you think he knows how much we love him?" Sarah looked at the big scarred dog now snoring gently with his chin resting on a stuffed bear. "I think," she whispered, "he's always known." Emily yawned, eyes already closing. "Good, because I never want him to forget." Down the hall, Sarah paused outside the door before turning off the light. She stared at the two of them, girl and dog, both survivors, both healing, and both exactly where they were meant to be. She didn't say it out loud, but she thought it all the same. Thank you, Bolt, for everything. Closing note to viewers. If you followed Bolt and Emily's journey all the way to the end, thank you. Their story reminded us that sometimes healing doesn't come from doctors or counselors. It comes on four legs with a scar, a wagging tail, and a quiet kind of courage. Now we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had an animal change your life? If so, what did they teach you about hope, loyalty, or second chances? Drop your story in the comments. We'd be honored to read it. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more true stories that celebrate the bond between people and the animals who stand by them. See you in the next story. Until then, hug your hero.